This is Book Public from Texas Public Radio. I'm Yvette Benavides. On this episode, I talked to author Fernando A. Flores about his latest novel, Brother Brontë. The setting is Three Rivers, Texas. The year is 2038. An industrialist named Pablo Henry Crick is the mayor of the town that's become a surreal wasteland where reading books is against the law, and the women work as indentured laborers at a fish cannery. The atmosphere is poisoned. The people are poor and under the thumb of Crick, who only gets rich in all of this. Neftalí is the last of the literate citizens in the town. She hides books and she reads books. She and her best friend, Proserpina, try to outwit Crick after a series of violent atrocities. They will rise up and reclaim their city, do away with Crick's book shredders, and help preserve books, including the ones by a mysterious renegade author named Jasmine Monel Rivas. Brother Brontë is hard to define, but it's full of adventure, profound themes, and unforgettable characters. It's an electric look at a future that is somehow plausible and resonant. I spoke to Fernando A. Flores about his latest novel, Brother Brontë. Well, I'm so excited to get to talk to you about Brother Brontë.
Thank you so much.
I've so enjoyed, almost as much as reading the book, reading about the book. I mean, the rave reviews that you're getting, Fernando.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. One never knows what's going to happen, so I'm very grateful. Yeah.
I think it's fantastic and well-deserved.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
For our listeners, maybe who haven't read the book yet, do you think you can summarize the novel for us and just kind of set the table for us?
Oh man, I always have such a difficult time doing that. Let me see. Well, it takes place in the year 2038 in a small town called Three Rivers, Texas. In this town, all unemployed mothers need to work at this fish cannery called the Big Tex Fish Cannery that is sort of owned also by the mayor of the town, who is the founder also of the Big Tex Fish Cannery. But our main character throughout the narrative is a young woman named Neftalí, and she was once upon a time in a band, and this is the adventures pretty much of her and her ex-bandmate Proserpina wandering in this landscape that was once a tech capital. It was once a inspiring tech capital that was going to happen in Texas, that at the last minute, just everyone left. Everyone pulled out all their money. So all these big empty buildings were just left in the middle of nowhere, with the remainder of the population that either stayed behind or was there from the very beginning. And in this world, also, reading is outlawed. You need a literacy permit to either have books or to teach any kind of reading. And the law enforcement goes around not only confiscating and shredding books, but the administration of the town gives out book shredders to the local youth who are like unemployed and don't go to school, to go around shredding books that are missed by the authorities. So in this landscape, yeah, it's being wandered by Neftalí and Proserpina and the people around them in their lives. I hope that makes sense.
It does make sense, and so many things I want to ask you. Let me start with the setting of Three Rivers. That immediately caught my attention because, as you know, Three Rivers, Texas is basically a town that was designed to be segregated back in the early 1900s.
Wow, yeah.
So I'm wondering, why did you settle? It's a real place. I'm wondering why you settled on this particular place.
To me, it just became part of the story organically from the beginning. It was born out of this town, out of this idea of this town. Really, I passed, being from South Texas and living in Austin now for 20 years, I have driven through Three Rivers on numerous occasions, and there's always just the name itself there's something about it to me that is like, I don't know, like otherworldly or something. Three Rivers. So to me, it was just an organic thing, like a story, like once upon a time in Three Rivers kind of thing, There was something about, the number three. I just never think about Three Rivers. Whenever we usually think about rivers, we think of them on a singular level, one river, much less two rivers, much less three rivers. So three rivers, So by then I'm like, three rivers. There's something about that, just that idea that was just stayed with me. So when I started writing this, the setting was always just there. And I don't want to say really that I chose it or whatever. It's just to me, it was just like it was just there for the taking in many ways. It was just and I just so happened to, I guess, tap into that energy,
Yeah. Oh,
I hope that makes sense.
it does. I love it. And the concept of three rivers also is and I see what you're saying, the number three, the idea it almost it connotes something almost fabulistic, just as you say. And the year, Fernando, is 2038. And when I look at that number, I think, oh, that's so far away from now. But it's not, but it is, but it's not. It's like 13 years from now. And one could assume, I guess, for that reason, that so somebody asked me, oh, is Fernando Flores' novel futuristic? And I wanted to immediately say, oh, no, but you have built this world here that is different and, in the future and of the future. But then I start to think about how maybe it's not beyond our basic understanding. And that's a very sad thing to say. It's in the future, but it's not quite futuristic. So I do want to ask you these two questions, like why the year 2038? And then is this futuristic or is this a dystopian novel? Do you consider it a dystopian novel?
You know, 2038. I think I like the idea of picking a year that I could hypothetically live through,
Yeah.
I thought about George Orwell when he called his book 1984. I don't think it would have been a stretch for him to have lived through that year, 1984. He picked a year that was far away enough for him not to be like impossible for him to live through if he's super like pretty old. But more than likely he wouldn't have seen it, even if he wouldn't have died the way he did just around that time the book came out. And also, like, I thought about somehow I landed on the year 1988. I'm like, okay, I know people who were born around 1988. So, like, 50 years from 1988 will be 2038. And I think when I was really thinking about the time, even though a lot of the time is not really mentioned, and the way the time works is kind of like in a Julio Cortázar kind of novel in
Yeah.
many ways sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, as writing it, I still have to figure out the time. So I was like, when I was thinking about the time scales and how old people were, I landed on that. Okay, 1988, 50 years from that, it's 2038. Okay, so I like that idea of it. I like that idea of it. And it's the same as Three Rivers. It really told me what it was gonna be. And as far as me thinking whether it's hard for me to think as far as labels go, like dystopia, magical realism, all these things, it's just hard for me. I do realize that we have to call them certain things and that obviously they are, when you're gonna view it from a certain way. And I'm a bookseller too, so we have to think in the sense of sections and things like that, as far as categorizing books too. But like a dystopia, I'm like, I think when I was writing this, I did not want anything that was like super like what we would call like a futuristic kind of novel. Like there's no flying cars or anything kind of like ultra like technology that seems implausible. I wanted the technology in there to be in this book to be like rudimentary and kind of plausible and kind of like easy to visualize to me anyway. So I don't know if I wouldn't call it maybe fantastical. I
Yeah.
don't, but again, I'm not sure because to me, I'm dealing with things that are very present. Or like in the days when I was writing it, all these things were very, very present in my psyche And I was just trying to collaborate with all these things as best as I could as a writer, because I feel that that is my role, I guess, as a writer. And I wrote it, yeah, in the same way that I wrote my other novels and my other books too, like trying to perfect this way of collaborating with what's already there and trying to understand the type of story that only I can tell.
Yeah, I thought about that idea with your stories that if it's surreal, if there's an element that's a little bit beyond reality, I'm perceiving it as something that underscores a reality. And this is the way surrealism works, right? It shouldn't just be this gratuitous thing, some weird element in a story, something unusual. It's not a gratuitous thing. It's something that helps me discern something very real in your stories.
Yeah, because like in the end, I don't believe in being weird for the sake of being weird. To me, if there's something weird in the story, it's because it needs to be there. I don't, it this needs to be there to get to the root of the story, and the root of the story is always the human emotion, the human emotion, whatever it is, whatever it that is
Yeah.
that you have to access. This is the way that you just access it, or just me. Like, I don't know the way other writers access it, but to me, that is the way that I can do it.
Yeah. I want to ask you, oh my gosh, there's so many things. I want to ask you about Neftalí. I want to ask you about Pablo Henry Crick. Talk to me a little bit about these characters and also, of course, Prosperina,
Yeah,
Proserpina. I keep saying
yeah.
Prosperina, like
No, no,
Prospero.
no. Yeah, 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 totally. Sometimes they're not easy. Yeah, definitely.
Talk to me about these characters and, you know,
Yeah,
this Pablo Henry Crick guy. Oh my goodness! So there's a lot here. There's a lot here to unpack.
yeah, definitely. Well, with Neftali, I think that that's how also like when Three Rivers and all these things were coming together, I think at the time also I had this idea of somebody in the future, like a young woman in the future who was named after Pablo Neruda, the Chilean poet. And Neftali is one of Pablo Neruda's names. I don't think that either Pablo or Neruda were part of Paulo Neruda's real name, but Neftali was one of his name. And I just had this person. And after that, it became easy. I was like, oh, this person in the future, she's named after Paulo Neruda. The kind of person who would name their kid after Paulo Neruda in that way, the kind of person that person would grow up into being in this setting in Three Rivers. All these things were just, I guess, fascinating to me. And this is, yeah, and the book is just a product of me, my fascination of me trying to get to the root of what the story is of who is this person? Who is this person who was alive in this time and place, because yeah, because that's the way I try to access it. To me, it's like something like a real thing that happened, and sort of like because it is me that is the writer, it comes out a certain way. It comes out in this. So, and Pablo Henry Crick is sort of based on, well, a lot of things in this book are really influenced by the 19th century, whether it's like 19th century narratives, for example. There's a Tale of Two Cities narrative in here. The tiger element is like, I don't know, William Blake's tiger or like Rudyard Kipling's tiger. Around the time that Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, a volcano in Indonesia had erupted and blocked out the sun in certain areas of Europe for stretches of time or altered the way the atmosphere looked. These kinds of things like long lost twins kind of narratives. That is like a 19th century thing, but also what influenced the book as well were 19th century kind of politics. And one of them was like the Homestead strikers in the Northeast. How one day this Russian guy named Alexander Berkman heard in the news or in the news wire or whatever of the Homestead strikers, and Andrew Carnegie, and all that stuff over there, that steel manufacturing, corruption kind of thing. So this guy, one day this Russian guy, Alexander Berkman, one day decided to travel to America to kill Andrew Carnegie or something like that. And it took him a year and a half, I think, or something like that to get to the US. And then he, tried to do that very thing. But instead of getting Carnegie, he got like his right-hand man or something, whose name was Henry Clay Frick. So this guy, Pablo Henry Crick, is sort of based off of this guy. And all these 19th century kind of politics, especially the way the fish cannery worked, the way Three Rivers kind of worked politically. All these things were very important to my narrative, to getting to understand, especially witnessing like 19th century politics making a comeback. Even then, I feel like I really had to wrap my mind around what the concerns of the 19th century, sorry, were to in literature and all these writings and what we consider like the canonical, narratives of the era. So, and what the recurring probably not only concerns but narrative tropes were. I don't know. That's it.
I think that's so interesting because the knee-jerk reaction, I think, or response from people might be that this is a novel of 2025, of the 21st century. And
Wow.
I kept looking at it and thinking, yeah, but this is Fernando A. Flores. You're like, for me, you're like one of the most well-read writers that I know of. And
Oh,
I knew there had to be something else to it. So I'm so
uh-huh.
glad you explained it this way. And it does go to this idea of, well, first of all, the elements that are in this novel that are very much, as you say, they do harken back to a whole other time, the 19th century, as you said. And the cannery, of course, there is this kind of a thing in 2038, Three Rivers, Texas. When we're in this world, it is one that is so, as you said, rudimentary. It's so basic, it's so low frills, and people live very simply. And there is nothing that's very high tech here. There is nothing that is, save for something like these book shredders, which really aren't high tech at all. But the sensibility, I think, of suppression and depression, I think, is what people might look at and say, oh, this is such a novel for about 2025, when really it sort of is underscoring this idea that history repeats itself, or, stories just come back in a new iteration. There are character types also, because there are types of people. It's very interesting to me to hear this answer from you about how this is not necessarily a novel. And I know that novels take a long time to write. It's such a long process of years. Like, you couldn't have known or predicted what we would be going through in 2024 or 2025. So it is just fascinating to me that this idea about women being forced to work in this way, in these sort of deplorable conditions, the idea that there is such a thing as book shredders that are so pervasive, that reading is something that requires a permit. It's the stuff of nightmares, but it is the stuff of that I feel like we can almost believe it would happen today.
Yeah. I wish I could take credit for it. I wish I could say, yes, I did that on purpose, or like, yes, I had a grand plan or whatever. In many ways, I'm very baffled by all of it, and this idea of like, I keep thinking about this idea of like things changing meaning with time, with things happening in time, like, yeah, the meaning of this book has changed with all this happening right now, yeah. And like me wrapping my mind around that is, I'm still getting adjusted to it, and I'm still having to untangle it in many ways. So yeah, yeah. I am just as thinking about it, and yeah, I wish I could articulate it better, but I understand. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, literature and art, it meets a certain moment in time. That's what makes art, is that it can be resonant at any particular, it meets that moment in time. It finds us when we need it, I think, sometimes too, for whatever resonance or whatever we can learn from it. about society or humanity or each other. But so I want to ask you a little bit about reading. I kind of alluded to this idea that you're just so incredibly well read. I'm always so impressed by that when I've been able to read your work or read about you or talk to you. Reading in the context of this novel, what is the question you are asking or answering? But maybe it's more a question you are asking about books and reading and the reading life and readers and people who value and love reading.
Let me see. Let me think about this. To me, I don't know. Like, I think, yeah, people ask themselves a lot, what is the value of these things in the face of so many horrible things? Yeah. And these are things worth asking and analyzing. And to me, like, everyone, regardless of what is going on, needs moments of like beauty or human articulation or connection. We need some time alone. And these things are always going to be present in our desires, regardless of what is going on. So to me, one of the main things that I asked myself early on, like in this book, was like, okay, I wanted to tell a story about a band breaking up also, like in the future, because I look around like 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, when all my friends were like in bands, and I looked around and I'd be like, what would these people be doing if they couldn't do this? If they couldn't do this, what would they do? Obviously they're able to articulate some kind of their madness or irony or something about their lives in through music, through performance. And what if they didn't have this? And that question was very prevalent in me. Also, when like in my book Tears of the Truffle Pig, the peripheral kind of characters who are artistic outside of what's going on in the main narrative have these desires. So I had this question, like, and I'm like, after I wrote that book, I was like, I have to face this question now of what would these creative people do if that's denied to them because of the circumstances of their realities or political lives, and their day to day and financial and everything. And this is the response to that. This was the response to that. And to me, it was more of a question, but the question remains unanswered to me. Like by the end, I'm done with the book. I'm like, okay, I know that I had this conversation here, and the conversation is the book itself. I don't know if it's my. I guess I don't think it's for me to answer those things. I think somebody else could probably say those things more than me, the writer, because to me that's like a critical type of analyzation that I lack at the moment. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I think I just wanted you to talk about how much you love to read because
I
that,
do love, I mean,
yeah.
I read all the time. I have this stack of books from the 20th century that I missed. Like I never read Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. That to me is like a book that I think most people are like who I know who are readers have read. But I mean, like I never took a class that made me read it. So I never read that. I never read, Things Fall Apart also, like I have it here. But I have also kind of stuff like I have this Elizabeth Bowen book that I've never read. And I love her, and I have also like the March by Joseph Roth, which is this, Austro-Hungarian kind of narrative that I'm excited to get to know and read. So I'm always surrounded by all kinds of books here, like this is one of my favorite little books right here. It's called Cat Town. It's a collection of poems by Hagiwara, modernist Japanese poet. And I just love what he does that nobody else does in these poems. So I'm always revisiting things. I'm always trying to be a better reader, and I'm always trying to also like read like my contemporaries, like people who are putting out books now. I'm always reading books by I hear somebody who, I don't know, if I hear somebody from a community or anything that is putting out a book, I'm interested in reading it. Or, I try to be a good literary all around. I try to read the classics and read my peers and everything. And I think that's important. I'm also a bookseller, so it excites me to be part of in all these ways, to be part of the entire literary conversation. Sometimes you put out a book and you feel helpless. I'm sure it's just out there. But I like being a bookseller, not because I'm not selling my books. But I like the idea of getting behind all these other books that I feel other people are not getting behind. So that makes my heart happy, I guess.
Oh, that's great. And Fernando, I need to talk to you about the title of this book.
Yes, Brother Bronte.
Yeah,
Yeah.
without spoiling it. I don't want to spoil anything. So can you talk about the title, knowing that we should not spoil anything for the listeners who are going to read
Well,
this
I
book?
don't feel, yeah, I don't think it's inappropriate to say the following, and I don't think I'm giving anything away. But also, when I started writing this book, around the time that I was trying to articulate about Three Rivers, Neftalí, all these things, formulating, I knew that this book that I was writing, that the title of the book was going to be the title of the fake book within the book,
Mhm.
you know. And to me, there was something about that. I was like, okay, because I was like, okay, eventually I have to explain what this is, and I have to kind of do it because I have to kind of, to me, that told me about the world. It told me about book banning and all these things. To me, I was able to articulate it and also to have this connection with like literary history with the Bronte sisters that whose work are very very important to me, and also their 19th century kind of narratives. Again, that to me, like, there's something about those landscapes, and when I think about like the real life Three Rivers and real life South Texas and just rural Texas, there's something that kind of resonates to me between the Bronte sisters and these landscapes. And it made me kind of wonder, like, establish some kind of real connection in the literary world between all these things, all these images and feelings, that and actual locations, So to me, I wanted to kind of tie all these things together with Texas, with the types of stories that exist here, and to try to connect them with like not only with the 19th century, but these narratives that we've all grown up around. The books of the Bronte sisters have been adapted to movies our entire lives so many times, over and over. And I love them every time, but I'm just trying to say that they're so prevalent. That imagery and those tragedies are so prevalent. And those kinds of people too. Like, to me, it was interesting to try to establish some kind of connection, and to me, it was like a rural connection too, because I guess, something else I was really like talking about it out loud, like The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. I hope I'm saying that correctly. The Russian writer. That narrative was also very important to Brother Bronte, in the way that it also deals with similar themes as I dealt with here. And to me, like all these traditions, all these literary traditions, were worth grappling with and were worth trying to connect with to try to tell an ultra, maybe Texan, maybe border, maybe whatever kind of story, American, Mexican American, all these things kind of story. And if it just so happens to be dystopia or magical realism or whatever what people want to call it, I was okay. I have to be okay with that because I realize that what I'm trying to do is, I don't see a lot of like literature from this area like try to connect with things like in this way. And I'm not saying that in any kind of way but I'm just I guess I say it in the way that how I approach a project is how do I do this in the way that only I can do it. And if it's ultra complex like this, I think that I can do it. I think that I can somehow manage it, and be able to tell a fun story, because that's the overall what I want to do. I want to be able to, like The Wizard of Oz for the first time kind of thing, to its original audience, like that feeling. I don't know.
I think you managed that. I mean, this ripple effect from the Bronte sisters all the way to this Three Rivers, 2038 story. What you're saying reminds me so much of this quote that's largely attributed, I think, to Turgenev or maybe to Tolstoy or someone else, but this idea of with short stories, we all came out of Gogol's overcoat, this quote, right? And I feel like there's something to that we all came out of, the Bronte sisters, many
Yeah.
stories. We have to be connected. We are connected, George Orwell, and even this Russian author that you mentioned that is important to you in terms of Brother Bronte is like that it has to what is the expression from Yeats, the spiritus mundi, right? There's this repository of literary works. We have to connect. And I think also for someone like you who has read and reread so many things, and all of those things inform your life as a writer, or the things that capture your attention and your fascination inform your life as a writer. All of those things are within the pages of the things that you write, of your books.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish I could take credit for it. I don't know. I'm just feel lucky. I just feel lucky that the book is a book, I really just do. And it's been received the way it has, really, because we never know, like I said, and to me, like, this is the book. This is the book that I set out to write. I was like, okay, this is it. This is the book that I set out to write. It'll probably be one of the most complex book I'll ever write. I'll say that right now. So I'm satisfied with it. I don't know. So I'm really just touched to hear that other readers have been connecting with it as well.
Yeah, I love this idea. It has been so well received. I've read so many rave reviews of it. I know people who have read it and love it.
Oh,
And
oh,
this idea, too, for me, that the book is the book and that you're satisfied with what it is. Sometimes those things don't connect for writers, And
yeah.
I just think that is so incredible. And I do want to say that so many of the things that I asked you about seem rather bleak. But you said the word fun, and I thought, oh, yeah, this is a very fun, rich, colorful, energetic, and your prose, I've told you this before, your gorgeous prose. I mean, you're just such a singular writer, Fernando, that
Thank you so much.
I'm
So
so
nice.
eager to tell more people about this book so that they can pick it up and read it, because it's so smart, it's so fun, and it's just so
Thank you.
creative and special. It really is.
Thank you so much. That really means a lot to me. I appreciate it.
Fernando A. Flores, thank you so much for talking to me today. I'm so honored. I feel so honored to get to talk to you and so happy to get to talk to you.
Oh, it's an honor for me, Yvette. Thank you so much. I'm glad we finally got to talk. I really appreciate all your careful reading throughout the years, not just right now, but throughout the years. You've always been a very careful reader, and I really, really appreciate that. And thank you so much. So not only for this, but also for your contributions to the literary world throughout the years. And it's really meant a lot. I know not just to me, but to other people out there who need it. All right.
You're so nice. Thank you for saying that. That means so much to me. Thank you, Fernando.
Thank you, Yvette. Thank you, Yvette.
Fernando A. Flores is the author of Brother Brontë. You can read more about him at his website at thewriterflores.com. This has been Book Public from Texas Public Radio. Write to us at bookpublic@tpr.org. Jacob Rosati composed our theme music. Dan Katz is Texas Public Radio's news director. I'm Yvette Benavides.